Hello, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Or, of course, if you are watching on our growing YouTube channel, that is Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, we're here for the UNC Florida State edition of the preview podcast. Obviously, the Tar Heels preparing to take on the Seminoles this Saturday in Chapel Hill, 3:30 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. FSU entering the game 1-4, 1-2 in the ACC. Carolina sitting at 3-2 overall and 2-2 in conference play. I mean, there's a lot to talk about, obviously. We always like to look back just a little bit before we kind of move ahead and look at Florida State and look at, what Carolina needs to do to get a win on Saturday. But obviously the Tar Heels coming off a win over Duke, big win over Duke in Chapel Hill. Carrying a little bit of momentum in for that performance. I thought the defense looked really well and played really well in that performance. I still think, despite putting up, I guess it was 31 points because of Trey Morrison's, scoop and score. I thought the Tar Heels looked okay offensively. Still some of those same issues that we've been talking about all year are there, which we'll hit on a little bit later in the podcast. But overall, I think Carolina's taking a little bit of momentum in it, feeling a little bit more confident about who they are. And we've talked about kind of looking at this schedule, looking at this Florida State team. I mean, would you agree with me, AJ, that, I think it's a case of Carolina shows up and plays the way they can play and are capable of playing from what we've seen from this team, especially at home this year. It should be a game that the Tar Heels should have no problem winning in the end.
Yeah, and the reason we look back at a game that was played 4 days ago is because I'm a firm believer that games are connected. Now, they're connected in how you evaluate a team. They're connected in, what happened there that we need to see different coming up this week?
You can't just forget about it.
Yeah, I know that when Mac says at times, games are just not as connected as they used to be because you have the wild swings in performances. You've got Georgia Tech, on the goal line with a chance to win at Clemson, then blowing out Carolina, and then getting their derriere handed to them at home by Pittsburgh. Yeah, that's going on. But as I've said before, the season is a book, and each game is a chapter in that book. And in the end, they kind of lead up to the finality, the conclusion. So what we've seen through 5 games from North Carolina tells me what I'm looking for as a guy who observes the team in its growth coming up in the next game, whether it's against Florida State, which is struggling big time, or whether they were playing a really, really good team. It would be the same thing. You got to protect Sam Howell, right? And you've got to be able to run the ball between the tackles. Yes. Wide receivers have to get more separation, more guys other than Josh Downs. Yes. I think people want to see more of Kamari Morales. Yes. And defensively, they did so many things well in the Duke game. We kind of have to pogo stick over that back to Georgia Tech, what went wrong with a running quarterback. Duke didn't give them that much of a threat with a running quarterback, and that's what they play this week in Jordan Travis. So you draw on stuff from the first 5 games, and that shapes my personal vision and what I'm looking for coming up in this game, expecting from the program. There are some elements to Florida State's team that Carolina fans should be aware of and should be concerned about. Jordan Travis, probably number 1 in that department. But I am a firm believer, and this could be the shortest preview pod of all time, Jacob. If Carolina plays, if they're better at protecting Sam, better at running between the tackles, they do those 2 things, I see no reason they don't win this game because they're just a better team. They're in a much better frame of mind, especially at home. I think that they know who they are a little bit more. I know that Max said we're still trying to find an identity, but imagine being Florida State. Imagine the stress of being on a team at Florida State that lost to an FCS school. Imagine being on they had a sequence of games in which they lost to an FCS school and got blown out by Wake Forest. Imagine being a 40-year FSU fan enduring that. Imagine being a kid in a program that I've been down there a bunch. I've been around their football facilities. I've covered a lot of games down there. I mean, you walk by the Sod Cemetery, and there is a standard there. Nobody needs to tell you what the standard is. The standard is just right in front of you. And it's interesting when Mac was saying the other day about how the kids feel like they'll let the fans down. How do you think those kids feel? So I think that emotionally, psychologically, from a football perspective, they're probably pretty fragile. So if Carolina has some early success, Carolina should be able to put their foot on FSU's throat and earn a fairly comfortable win. Now, will they do that? That's the drama. That's why the games are played. That's why we can make all the predictions we want. We're rarely ever exactly spot on. And that's what makes this stuff so fun. And will there be an element of surprise from Carolina in this game? Will somebody step up, especially from on the offensive side, that hasn't really stepped up yet, that thrust themselves forward because they're trying to gather working parts on offense to get to a point where when they go to South Bend and they host Wake, they go to Pitt, which is 3 games in a 12-day span, and they close the season in NC State, which are all pretty good teams, that they're in much better position to win those games than they would be if those games were played today.
Yeah.
That, to me, is what this week and this game is about.
Definitely. I'm going to dive into Florida State like we kind of always do. We like to dive into the opponent a little bit before we dive into them a little bit more, and then we'll talk about what Carolina needs to do to win after that. But 1-4, like I said, overall 1-2 in the ACC. You talked about Jordan Travis, quarterback for the Seminoles. They've obviously split time. Mackenzie Milton's played a little bit as well. Actually has thrown for more yards than him, but I know Jordan Travis was a little bit banged up this year as well. But he did start against Syracuse. Is expected to start against Carolina this week as well. 368 passing yards for him, 6 TDs, 5 interceptions. I'll talk about Milton real quick. 548 yards, 4 interceptions, 2 touchdowns. So I think Travis, we saw it in Tallahassee last year where he's a guy that can run as well. I think that dual threat ability, like we've seen with Carolina over the years, it's something they've struggled with defensively at times. Also saw it earlier this year with Sims down at Georgia Tech as well. So definitely something to watch out for. At running back, you got Jashawn Corbin. Might have butchered that first name. Apologies if I did. 62 carries, 504 yards, 4 touchdowns, 8.1 yards per carry. So not a bad yards per carry average for Corbin. Looking at the wide receiver group, nothing really spectacular stands out. You got Ontario Wilson, who's the leading receiver for Florida State, but has only caught 9 balls for 133 yards and 1 touchdown. You got 2 other wide receivers with over 100 yards. Well, excuse me, one of those guys is a tight end, but just 3 receivers with over 100 yards, leading receiver only with 133 yards. So it hasn't been a super prolific offense. Actually, the number 12 scoring offense in the ACC out of 14 teams, averaging 25 points a game. Defensively, it doesn't get much better. Let's just put it that way. Dead last in defense in terms of points they've allowed this season. 31.4 points per game. Like I said, that's dead last in the ACC through right now through 5 games. But the main guy on defense for them, inside linebacker Jermaine Johnson, leads them with tackles with 38 and sacks with 5.5 on the season. I think Florida State in total only has 14 sacks. So almost getting close to nearly half of those sacks has come from Jermaine Johnson.
They have more than Carolina.
Exactly. So yeah, you got to give him credit on that. But Johnson, when you look at their stats on defense, is the guy that stands out, leads them in tackles, leads them in sacks, and definitely a guy that you got to watch out for if you're Carolina offensively. So, I mean, you can look and look at the numbers on this Florida State team, and you look at the guys on offense, nothing really impresses you. There's nobody that really stands out like, oh, man, this guy's a beast. I mean, I guess Corbin would be the best guy stats-wise at running back, and he's only run for 504 yards, but 8.1 yards per carry is a solid return. Defensively, like I said, worse in the ACC in terms of points allowed. There's just not a lot you can look about on paper, let me specify that, from this Florida State team, and also what we've seen in the games they played this season, and really look at and say, wow, this is a good team, or this is a team that could really come in here and is going to be a very, very, very tough opponent for Carolina to beat. Now, I'm not saying that's how the games goes down, because when it comes down to it, you got to go out there and play and see what happens. But on paper, like we've talked about, it really seems like it's a game. And I know Carolina's not, maybe having the year that a lot of fans have expected so far. But on paper, when you're looking at how Carolina's played at home, especially this season, the points they're putting up, this is a game where you think, if Carolina takes care of business, focuses on themselves, and plays like they are capable of playing, I don't, like I said earlier in the podcast, I just don't foresee this being a game that FSU should win or can win if Carolina takes care of business on their end.
Well, let's look at some of the ways FSU can win this game. It begins with Jordan Travis. And by the way, they average about 200 yards rushing a game.
The solid running back game. That's about the best thing.
They're running the ball. Mm-hmm. Part of it's because they haven't really had a lot of success passing it. They've thrown 9 interceptions. If Jordan Travis is healthy, he's going to be the quarterback. God bless Mackenzie Milton. What a
fantastic story.
I just saw something earlier today where the Mayo Clinic gave him some kind of honor.
He's up for some award for them. Yeah.
Yeah. And, he's a great story. And I guess if this is what FSU season is, at least he's given them something positive.
Yeah.
And what he did against Notre Dame was a lot of fun. But even in watching that, I told you guys, we were talking about the league. I was like, I just don't think the quarterback situation there is going to sustain itself. Jordan Travis, I think, is better because he can run. They've had some issues. The offensive line's been banged up. Apparently, they're all back, and the starters,
Interesting.
the 5 guys that they thought would be the starters in August will be the starters Saturday in Chapel Hill. 4 of those guys started the game last year in Tallahassee. 10 of the 11 starters Saturday started that game in Tallahassee, and they blew the Tar Heels up in the first half. So what they have coming in, they're coming off a win. And they're coming off a win where they had to do something late to win. They won on a last-second field goal, but go back and watch that game. Jordan Travis had a 33-yard run that put them in a situation where he basically, I won't say flipped the field, but they went from like their own 25 to the opposing 45 or 40, and that 42 in that area. That put him in position to make a couple of plays, and boom, they're in position for a field goal. If he doesn't make that run, or if it's a 15-yard run, they're attempting a 50, 55-yard field goal at the end instead of a 34-yard field goal. Could have lost in overtime.
Could be a different story, yeah.
Yeah, because Schrader was playing really well for Syracuse. So they got to win. So this is a wounded group that's coming off a win. So they have not felt this good about themselves in a while. Number 2, they're playing a team that gave them their only high point of last year. Carolina was 5th in the country. I was at that game. It was the first time Carolina played in front of anybody more than a smattering, which was all that was allowed at Kenan. There were around 12,000 people in there.
Big crowd for last year.
And for last year, that was huge. A full house in a raucous environment. Tar Heels didn't show up, and they got bombed early on in that game, and they recovered and had a chance late, but some drops kind of ended. And in a way, the right thing happened. Florida State deserved to win that game, and so they did win that game. So Florida State has that going for it, and it has Jordan Travis, who I don't think he's 100% yet, but he sure looked healthy Saturday against Syracuse. Some of the cuts he made, some different runs. Carolina can't stop him. Florida State's going to have a chance because they're probably not going to put the ball in the air a whole lot because they don't want to get sacked and they don't want to turn it over. So run the ball, chew clock, keep Carolina's offense off the field, and that's how Florida State can win this game. The rest of Florida State's team is an issue. They're 13th in the ACC in offensive efficiency, 13th in defensive efficiency. It's just some really, really bad numbers there. But I think that you have to look at them with Travis. So if you look at all the numbers, that's who they are. That's real. But Travis, as opposed to Melton, I think is a guy that can put them in position to win this game much better. If Travis couldn't play with Melton, I'd say Carolina an absolute cakewalk, guaranteed. Mm-hmm. The Travis element, I think, makes it a little bit more challenging. Plus, FSU in their last 3 halves, the last game and a half, they've actually defended the pass really well. They're still like 100th in the nation or something defending the pass, and they give up big plays, and that's obviously Carolina's specialty. But they have been playing a little bit better of late. So they think that they're growing, and that's what they'll bring into Kenan Stadium. So I think the Tar Heels need to jump on them early and hit them in the areas where they think they're growing. Big pass play, boom, squash all that growth in the secondary, and then stop Travis. Get up 3 and out, hit them, pop them, get them off the field, and whatever things that FSU is bringing into this game that's a positive, squash it early, and I think psychologically Carolina would have a chance to pull away. And I actually think that's more likely to happen than not.
Definitely. No, I agree. I think, like I said, I think it's a game that Carolina should be winning. I think it's a game that, like I said, if Carolina comes in and takes care of business, plays like they can and how they played at home so far this year, especially on the offensive side of the ball and even defensively, when you go back to the performance against Duke, it should be a game that Carolina should just come out with a win with on Saturday. And we've talked about it a little bit in some other podcasts that we've done and some of the videos we've done after the games in terms of, I don't know if a win over Florida State at home necessarily changes the vibe from the fans around this team and kind of how they're feeling about it. It definitely doesn't hurt it because obviously a loss would just be horrible and the exact opposite from the fans' perspective. I don't think a win over.
But that podcast we did about the fans' vibe hopping off, we said we were going to do one in 5 more games. We'd have to do one right after that.
Exactly. No, we'd have to just hop on there.
It would be an inferno. They're not going to lose this game.
I don't expect that to happen. No, I don't expect them to lose this one. And, we could sit here and talk about Florida State all we wanted to, but I think at the end of the day, it's a fact of Carolina doing what they can do and taking care of business. I know you've hit on a little bit already, but what is kind of the biggest thing that you think the Tar Heels have to do to win on Saturday? What's kind of the most important couple of things you're looking for?
Well, Max said they're still trying to find their identity, trying to develop their identity. So you need to do things that you want to be your identity. Like protect Sam.
Yep.
Their identity right now, if there is one, is a team that can't protect the quarterback and can't run conventionally between the tackles. Mm-hmm. Their identity is an offensive line that's struggling. Now, there are other variants that go into some of the struggles they've had. I think the lack of separation for receivers has played a big part in the passing issues. I think it's kind of messed up Sam's clock a little bit at times. And so they have to fix that. They have to change that narrative some. So they have an opportunity to do that in this game. But I'll tell you a couple of things I think this team, we could see more and more of this team moving forward, is getting off the field on third down. Yeah. Georgia Tech was 3 for 11. Duke was 2 for 15 on third down. That's fantastic. Duke came in at almost 58% on third down, and Carolina held them to 2 for 15. Florida State's only 35% on third down. So Carolina has a chance to be dominant on third down, get off the field, force punts. As they look to try to build an identity, because the offense, you don't know what you're going to get on the road, but a defense should be able to play more consistently regardless of environment. I can see where an offense gets affected. They said the noise in Blacksburg affected the calls and that kind of thing. Defense shouldn't have as much of that issue. So I think for UNC to contend for the ACC championship and possibly win it, Tar Heels need to be really good defensively every week, and some weeks great. And I think there were elements of them that were borderline great against Duke. They need to be that again against a team that's not very good offensively. So your identity should be take care of the teams you're supposed to take care of. Just put them out.
Yeah.
And move forward and earn a big win. You could still get better in the process. And that could become the internal expectation within the walls of the Kenan Football Center. Then you got Miami the following week, a team that's kind of wobbling around a little bit, might not even have De'Aaron King. Do the same thing there. Get a week off to heal up, go up to South Bend and see what you got. Yeah. The objective is to win and get better. The beautiful thing about having a game coming up this week, regardless of what Florida State has been this year, the last couple of years, it's an opportunity to get a win, and it's an opportunity to get better. So I think their identity should be improving and showing up certain aspects, but I really think the defense, especially being a little more simplified last week, I think has an opportunity to maybe become this club's identity. They're only 5 games in. They got 7 more to play. And they've had a couple of really good defensive performances. In fact, 3 of the 5 games, their opponents have no more than like 360 yards, which this day and age, that's pretty damn good. So let's see what they got. If Saturday is 4 out of 6 and the next week against Miami is 5 out of 7, then we can start saying, you know what, defense actually, they had a couple bad showings, but the defense actually is pretty good. I think that to me should be the mission.
Definitely. Maybe it's that time of the podcast again, AJ prediction time. Gotta.
I haven't
even sent mine yet either. I don't think.
Go ahead and let yours out. I'll wait.
Yeah, I haven't even sent my prediction in, and I
really have to think it through, Jacob.
Yeah, I know, right? I thought of one. I'm conflicted because, like I said, I'm still a little bit. I'm not sold on this Carolina offense, and it really has. I've talked about it so many times, but it has a lot to do with the offensive line. I just don't know what O-line is going to show up, what offensive weapons are going to show up. Is it just going to be the Sam Howell, Josh Downs show again like it was against Duke, or is somebody else going to maybe step up at the wide receiver position to free some guys up? But I still think Carolina puts up points. I like to stay in the 30 range with Carolina. It's been somewhat accurate so far. I think it was close to the amount of points that they were going to score against Duke. I expected Duke to score more. But I'm going to go 38. I think I'm going to go 38-17 in this one. I'm tempted to go 38-21. But I just haven't seen anything from this Florida State team. I mean, really in the past few years, but just focus on this year specifically. I just haven't really seen anything from this Florida State team to think they're going to be able to come in and just put up a bunch of points and not only do that, but stop Carolina on the other side of the ball too. Especially this defense, Florida State defense, is just not good.
I could see the hamster wheel turning in your head. This is really conflicting.
I was almost said 41 for Carolina.
I don't even know what the spread is. Somebody told me it was close.
I think it's 17, I believe. 17, 16.5.
I think that's fine. That's a big number, but I think that the Sam Josh Downs factor, I think, is certainly there. I think Carolina fans should, it'd be great if Josh is 8 receptions for 175 yards again, because he'd be ACC Player of the Week for wide receivers again.
It's fantastic, yeah.
If you want to see his team grow, you want to see Emery Simmons step up, you want to see Antoine Green step up, maybe somebody else. They've been using Kamari Morales a lot lately. Bryson Nesbitt played 9 snaps last week, and it'd be interesting to see how they use him.
I want to see him more.
I love the fact that they use multiple tight ends and 3 on that one 4th and 1 play or whatever it was.
So, I love the best play call of the day, in my opinion.
Just, I'm a big fan of that kind of football. So I'm looking at 42-17, something like that.
Yeah, it's fair.
But 42-17, where there aren't as many flies in the ointment.
Yeah.
Flies
in the ointment. I like that.
If they win 42-17 and Sam is sacked 5 more times and they have some other issues and you don't have 3 or 4 runs between the tackles that mask a bunch of runs that are not successful, they're not stopped. They still had like 10 negative plays last week in that game, even though they won 38-7. So a little better, a little more progress in some of the errors that have been an issue. And you know what? I think the staff would love to see a couple more turnovers. And I think Florida State's a team where you should be able to get some because they're turning over quite a bit, certainly with interceptions. So those are areas you want to see. You want to see the growth. You want to see them push this thing forward. Don't waste the opportunity of having game week preparation and an actual game. Get better.
100%. No, I couldn't agree more. I think it's an opportunity. It should be a game that Carolina's winning at the end of the day. And, whether that happens, we'll just have to wait and see. We'll obviously we'll be talking about it after the game, or I guess it'll be around, 7:30, 8 o'clock by the time we're doing our 3 things after that one. So we'll see what happens, right? We'll see what happens on Saturday. But I think on paper, which can get you in trouble sometimes, this is a game that Carolina should be winning if they can come in and take care of business.
Played on paper, my man.
Ooh, exactly.
I've never written an article about a game played on paper.
Exactly, because it just doesn't happen, right? So you got to go out there.
The paper stuff is what we're doing right now.
Exactly. But yeah, should be a win for Carolina. We'll see what happens on Saturday, right? But yeah, that'll do it for this episode of the Preview Podcast. If you think Carolina's going to win, go ahead and give us a thumbs up below. Make sure you get involved if you are a premium subscriber on TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're not, come over on and sign up. It's a great time to do it with basketball season kind of just around the corner right now. We do post these on our premium message boards when we roll this preview podcast out as well. Love to get people's kind of insight and opinions on how the game's going to go on and just have a discussion in there. So if you are a premium subscriber, head on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com, get involved in our message board chat. You'll find that on our premium message boards. You guys know where it's at if you're already a part of that community. So get involved over there. Like the video if you think the Tar Heels are going to win this one. And as always, guys, make sure you share. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. And make sure you hit that notification bell so you know every single time we upload. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.